Hey there, this is Liam from Running Remote, and if you started working remotely during the COVID pandemic, have you noticed that you're actually working way more than you did before? Even if you thought you were working too much already, well, you're not imagining things. Today, I am digging into why working remotely does not actually mean you have to do or should be working more hours. Now, before we get into all of that, if you're watching this video, I bet you're interested in remote work. Are you subscribed to this very YouTube channel or perhaps the email newsletter? Links below for more ways to get more Running Remote into your inbox faster. Now, back to learning about some crazy work weeks. Let's go. As I've said in many of my other videos, while the pandemic has certainly brought about many challenges, there are certainly a lot of folks really going through some tough times. For remote work, for instance, it's kind of been a double-edged sword. I mean, I miss traveling and visiting with employees and partners all over the world. I've flown 28 times in 2019, twice in 2020. That's been a little depressing, but never in my wildest dreams would I ever thought that 40% of the US population would be working remotely in the year 2021. Because so many people have been forced to work remotely, we're seeing all these employees and companies that might have shied away from remote work begin to embrace it, which I'm personally quite happy about. And because remote work is now such a buzzword, we're also seeing more focus on research into the effects and the results of a lot more of it. What inspired this particular video was an article from Bloomberg talking about how remote work employees are working a ton more hours than they were before. I was not surprised at all by this, but I was happy to see that this subject is actually getting some attention because it's something that we really need to talk about. And with attention comes insightful research. Nearly 70% of professionals who transitioned to remote work because of the pandemic say they now work on the weekends, and 45% say they regularly work more hours during the week than they did before, according to a survey of 2,800 workers by the Los Angeles-based staffing agency Robert Half. Remote work should not mean more work, and I'm not saying that it should mean less work either, although a lot of folks are quickly seeing how more efficient they can be without water cooler discussions, group birthday lunches, extended coffee breaks, and the like. Bloomberg quoted data from a NordVPN survey that showed the breakdown in the increase of the amount of hours worked by country, and in the United States, employees were working a typical 8-hour pre-pandemic workday, but as of January 2021, the number had risen to 10 hours a day. All in all, the average American worker and UK worker, Australian worker, Canadian worker had a sustained 2.5-hour increase in their workday. That's no good. So the big question becomes, why is this? Well, there's a few different reasons. Some might be working more hours because they've taken on more responsibilities after layoffs. Others might be working more hours because they are worried about keeping their jobs. While we've also seen a lot of those workers who live by themselves or are juggling family responsibilities like children and virtual learning are working more hours simply because they're frankly really bored and they're just sitting at home and they have no real other activities, like someone that is completely not me, because they simply have more free time. Well, I'm not going to advocate that you work from home more, and I'm not going to tell you to work less, though my company is all about working more efficiently from home, which can lead to working less actual hours. As someone who's worked remotely for 15 years, I'm here to share with you some of the best lessons I've learned on how to better balance work, life, and the rest. First off, the point that I really want to make here is even though people are working 2.5 more hours on average, as the Bloomberg piece and the NordVPN piece had mentioned, they actually are not working in continuous blocks. So what's happening is the classic working from home is turning into living at work, where you're pulling in your life and your work life into one small package. So you might be walking the dog for 2 hours, you might be taking a 3-hour lunch, you might be playing with your kids for an hour and a half during the day, and that's actually what's adding towards that workday once you delve down deeper into that data. And the reality is that remote workers are actually working exactly the same amount, if not less, than they were working inside of the office, but all that they're looking at is the time when someone started working on their computer and then when they stopped working at their computer. They're not actually looking at what they're doing throughout the workday. The reality is that there's a lot of distractions working from home, and that's my biggest first tip for you, is remove as many distractions as humanly possible. I use a tool like Time Doctor as an example, that if I go onto a distracting website like Facebook, Netflix, or YouTube, I'll literally get a pop-up saying, "Are you still working on making videos?" And then I'll say, "Yes, I am," if I'm actually using that YouTube video to do research, but if I'm not, it's just a gentle reminder to actually get myself back to work. And on average, I actually work 6 hours and 28 minutes per day. I've been doing that since the beginning of the pandemic, and that's a really good pace for me. The average workday in reality of effective remote work on the computer is actually 2 hours and 36 minutes. So the real workday and the actual time that you spend working are two very different numbers. And frankly, I would much rather have a much more productive person work 2 to 3 hours than someone pretend to work for 10, 11, 12 hours during a workday and only actually get 2 hours of work done. So next tip here, don't hand over your free time that you've gotten from lack of communication or travel. You might think to yourself, oh, well, I don't have to leave the house at 7:30 a.m. anymore just to get to the office by 9. I might as well get a head start on the day. Sure, major benefit of remote working is having greater flexibility over your time, but take advantage of that to your benefit. What's something that you could just never find time to do pre-COVID? Reading a book, meditating, exercising, perhaps a craft or a hobby. Take one of those blocks of time that you used to spend commuting each and every day and block it off for something non-work related. Even block it off on your own personal work schedule so you don't actually have meetings creep in, like sometimes I always have happened to me. I've also talked in past videos about the importance of remote work agreements. And if you're the boss, you should be proactively providing these to your employees to better establish experiences. Your employees will continue to overwork unless you specifically tell them, hey, I only expect 8 hours a day from you. Take this one step further by saying, I would take this one step further by actually saying, I expect 8 hours of work a day, but they don't actually have to be consecutive. Though I do ask that everyone be online during a set time as an example, or for specific meetings. Managing the boundaries between work and life is a skill set people need and most didn't have before the pandemic and still don't actually have. Simply handing an employee a laptop and downloading Zoom or some other collaboration software is not enough to help employees manage their work and lives through the pandemic and beyond. If you're an employee who is struggling with working all these extra hours, you should communicate with your boss ASAP. While it's my hope that they all respond positively, in reality, I know that it might not exactly go smoothly. That's another topic for another video, but I'm not telling you to quit your job, but a lot of companies are hiring remotely, and it might be time for you to find an employer that provides a different/better culture. And on this note, if you're an employer that thinks you're going to get more out of employees that are working longer hours, you might want to Google time work spent versus actual work getting accomplished and overall productivity metrics. Trust me, I know, I'm an expert at this stuff. The more people work does not actually result in them getting things done. This is a broken correlation. It doesn't actually work. Show me a study that shows that this is a positive correlation, and frankly, I'll show you a liar, because none of the studies that I've looked at has a correlation between extended work hours and work productivity. Ironically, you actually get more done if you spend less hours working, which I know is counterintuitive, but the studies definitely support this. Basically, forcing your employees to be online for longer hours isn't getting you more juice per squeeze per se. So what are you doing with your employees? I know for me, we've always had a perspective of no work hours actually need to be measured, but everyone does measure them. So we actually look at your work productivity as opposed to the amount of time that you put in. So if you, as an example, work, let's say 100 hours a month and you get better commissions than everyone on your sales team, frankly, we really want to study what is is inside your head and why you're doing such a great job in comparison to everybody else. I know that that's a counterintuitive perspective, but I think you should really take a look at pursuing that inside of your own businesses. For me, it was such a huge game changer to disconnect the amount of time that you work with actual work productivity. So if you have any other questions, put them down in the comments below. I'm an open book with regards to work productivity metrics and all this kind of stuff. This Bloomberg article and the Nord piece is kind of SHIT. I'm not allowed to swear on YouTube because it's not actually showing you how much time people are putting in. It's just literally saying people are spending more time working on their computers, but they're not actually getting things done. So that's what I really want to see people reverse, is get away from thinking, hey, I got to be at this laptop all day long to be able to get something done. Be focused, be productive, forget about all those other details, and just do you. So if you have any questions about that, put them down below. While you're down there, why don't you subscribe to this YouTube channel? It is indeed free. And if you've done all of that, hopefully I will see you in the next video. Talk to you later.